What up, nerds? Welcome back to the Nerdy Narrative. My name is Leslie Smith, and today on the channel, I'm going to talk about and share with you my favorite science fiction fantasy trilogies. The reason why I decided to film this video is I wanted to have a video diary of what my favorite trilogies were as of 2024. I'm in the middle of or almost finished with several other trilogies, and I'm curious to see who is going to be added to this stack or who may bump somebody off this stack in 2025. It's also a way to talk about my favorite books, which of course is the whole reason for the Nerdy Narrative. I have 7 trilogies that I'm going to talk about. I did arrange them in order of top favorite to least favorite of the 7. I think many of you who have watched the channel for years are going to guess some of these trilogies that are on here, but I think you're going to be surprised at where some of them are. Nobody that has watched this channel for any length of time is going to be surprised about number 1, and that is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This trilogy and its series means so much to me for so many different reasons. I have so many wonderful memories tied to this series that go along with my reading and enjoyment of it, and it's all tied together. I can't separate that out. Stephen Pacey as an audiobook narrator changed the game for me. I loved his narration, especially that of the character Glocta. Even when I was able to sit and read physically, I still had to have the audiobook go with it because I just couldn't do it without Stephen Pacey. Let's talk a little bit about this trilogy. Why do I love it so much? It was also my introduction to the grimdark subgenre of fantasy, which I fell in love with. I have consumed so many other grimdark fantasy books as a result of it. It gave me a love for a whole other subgenre of fantasy I had no idea even existed. An element that I always enjoy, no matter the genre, is humor. And this one, the very first page had me. It had me with the humor, the sarcasm, the wit of Logan Ninefingers. I was hooked. To avoid spoilers, I'm only going to talk about the overview of the trilogy if I can. If I can't, I will only talk about the first book in the series. I don't want to spoil anything for you. I want you to read these series and love them as much as I do. The Blade Itself, the First Law series, takes place in a fantasy world that is on the brink of war and an industrial revolution. Hundreds or possibly even thousands of years before this one begins, this fantasy world was populated by humans and demons. Where our story picks up, the demons have been banished by the world by a half-demon, half-human named Yuz. This guy was powerful enough to banish the demons from this realm. When the demons were banished from the world, they were sent to what is called the other side. This other side is the connection that still allows magic to be used in this world. There's 3 major players in this trilogy. We have the Union, we have the Gurkish Empire, and we have the North, which has just recently become a player because Bethod was able to unite all of the tribes of the Northmen there. And the Northmen are by far and away my favorite character group, but Sandan Glocta is my favorite single character. We are told the story of the trilogy between 6 different character points of view, one of them being Glocta, another favorite, which is Logan Ninefingers. To put it simply, it's war. It's about these 3 different groups fighting each other for domination. It's all about the conflicts between the 3, secret alliances, political maneuverings. It's fantastic. And I agree with everyone who has ever read this book and said it has no plot. I agree with you. The plot doesn't make itself obvious until the 2nd book of the series, but the characters are what make this one. They make the entire series, in my opinion. So highly recommend it. My top favorite fantasy trilogy. My 2nd favorite fantasy trilogy, it's actually a science fiction fantasy blend. And in my opinion, it is the best science fiction fantasy blend trilogy out there. Everything that this author manages to do in this trilogy, the world building is just exceptional. The characters are to die for. The plot, unique. Oh my gosh. I'm talking about the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. This epic fantasy trilogy tells the story of the world of Sarn that has been invaded by aliens known as the Juralia. Readers are going to open the first book in this series, The Ninth Reign, and discover that The Empire, the world of Sarn, is on the brink of collapse. The only reason that Sarn has held off the Duralia for so long are because of this great race of people known as the Eborans. When you begin this series, you discover that Ebora, which once glittered with gold, has now been destroyed. It's ruined. It's deserted. And one of those Eborans who has deserted Ebora is Tourmaline, known as Tourmaline the Oathless. His stance is, it's better to be out in the world enjoying what's left of it than sitting in his deserted ruined city waiting for it to fall in on him. His travels lead to his path crossing with that of Vintage, or as she is more properly known, Lady Vincenza de Grazon. Vintage offers Tourmaline employment. She is traveling around the world of Sarn looking for artifacts from the Duralia in hopes to study them and learn more about them. As you are probably able to guess, she has an ulterior motive for what she's doing. Their adventures lead to them joining forces with a witch who likes to set things on fire, and it just goes from there. It is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. All three books in the series are on equal footing in my opinion, as far as them all three being top tier reads. They each build off of one another, continuing the story, continuing the world building, continuing the character growth. I just absolutely loved it. My next favorite fantasy trilogy is a historical fantasy trilogy, and this is the Winternight Trilogy by Catherine Arden. This trilogy, this story is told beautifully. Catherine Arden has a gorgeous prose. She nailed the narrative voice for this trilogy. It's told in a fairy tale-like retelling. It's steeped in Russian folklore, which I was just eating that up. This trilogy gets its start in a medieval Russian village. A young girl, Vasilisa Petrovna, has received a spiritual gift. This gift allows her the ability to see all of the fantastical creatures that live in and around her village and her home, and even converse with them. The dark aspect of this is, because it's medieval Russia, this ability is seen by the Orthodox Church as a conflict, and they brand her a witch. And this is her story as she navigates this world with this gift. It's a story of wonder, of joy, of discovery, of love, of anger, hatred, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, it's beautiful, and I can't wait to reread it again. The epic fantasy trilogy that has my number 4 slot on this list, I've hardly seen anyone talk about this trilogy, and I don't understand it. It was one that was so good that as soon as I finished reading it and got to the end and saw everything pieced together and what was really happening, I wanted to immediately start rereading the series. That's how good it is. The trilogy that I'm talking about here is The Legacy of the Mercenary Kings by Nick Martell. The first book in this trilogy, The Kingdom of Liars, was Nick Martell's debut novel, and I am just astounded by that. It is wonderful. Something you all have probably picked up from me is I love political fantasy novels. Rebellion, murder, members of noble houses are being assassinated. The magic system in this one, it's one of my favorite elements in this series, and it's one of my favorite magic systems, period. In this fantasy world, magic costs memory to use. The more that you use it, the more of your memories you give up. And if you go too far, you can lose all of your memories and you become what is known as a forgotten. I loved the constant danger that put everyone in who used magic. The Legacy of the Mercenary Kings is the story of Michael Kingman. His entire family has been branded as traitors because 10 years prior, his father murdered the 9-year-old son of the king. Michael is desperate. He is obsessed with restoring them to their rightful place beside the throne, acting as the counterbalance between the royals and their rule. I know that is simply put, but there is nothing simple about this trilogy. It is wonderful, and I don't know why more people are not talking about it. Number 5 is the one that's going to shock y'all. When I show it to you, I'm going to read your minds. Red Rising is this far down? It wasn't number 1 or number 2? I love this trilogy, don't get me wrong. The Red Rising Saga is a favorite. It's on the list, obviously, but I didn't enjoy it more than my previous 4. For those of you who have not read Red Rising because of the hype, or or you've been told that it is just like the Hunger Games. There are some similarities, yes, in book 1, but my goodness, after that, I feel like there's no similarity at all. I'll go ahead and spoil the other 2 on my list by telling you that the Hunger Games ain't on here, so that should hopefully tell you something. The Red Rising Saga is another science fiction fantasy blend trilogy. It takes place on the world of Mars and follows a low-born character named Darrow and his wife Io. Mankind has actually been living and working on Mars for over 700 years when this story opens up. Society is separated and ranked by color. Those that are low-born, like Darrow, are called reds, and the highest ranked color are called golds. The catalyst that sets off the entire series occurs in this book when Darrow and his wife Io sneak into a forbidden area on Mars. They get caught, and at their trial, Io sings a forbidden song and is actually executed for it. This results in Darrow becoming a pawn. He wants retribution and revenge against the Golds who killed his wife. And then, of course, he is being used by a rebellious group to also strike at the Golds. And it just goes from there, and it is absolutely wonderful. Very enjoyable, a fast read trilogy. The second book is way better than this one, and the third book is the best of the 3 in my opinion. Number 6 is a science fiction mystery thriller trilogy. I'm sure you all have heard of the Wayward Pine series by Blake Crouch. This was my introduction to Blake Crouch as an author. I have since read and collected many of his books. He's become a favorite author, and I'm going to tell you, I did watch the TV series. First season was fantastic. The second season, they just went off the rails from the books, and it sucked and it ruined it, and I am so glad that is not how the book trilogy goes. This story begins when a U.S. Secret Service agent, Ethan Burke, wakes up in an unfamiliar town after being in an automobile accident. Once Ethan is up and moving around this town after his car accident, he's beginning to notice things. People can't remember how it is that they came to this town. There's an electric fence that surrounds the entire town. No one can leave the town. Everyone in the town is under 24-hour surveillance. Oh my goodness. It just goes from there. This is such a fantastic book. I never saw the ending coming from a mile away. Another trilogy that each book just keeps getting better and better. It just builds and builds. Just go ahead and know, if you pick up this series, go ahead and have all 3 books ready and waiting, because you are going to want to read these back to back. Number 7 is another science fiction fantasy blend trilogy, and it is going to shock a lot of you because it has a lot of romance in it. We do get away from that romance element, and it becomes more about this magical Middle Eastern kingdom that no one knows even exists. It's in 18th century Cairo. We're following the character of Nari. Nari is a con artist. She also has these really mysterious healing abilities that she has no idea how it is that she came to possess them. During an exorcism, which was supposed to be fake, by the way, she's a con artist, she accidentally summons a demon, Daryavahush. We'll call him Dara for short. He recognizes these healing abilities in Nari as abilities that belong to a people that he thought had been long dead, called the Nahi. Dara feels that the best course of action is to take Nari back to Davabad, teach her about this magical, mysterious world that he feels that she is a part of, even though she never believed in it. She's only getting things from his perspective because he stands on one side of the political war that is threatening to rip apart this kingdom. And what side is Nari going to stand on? This journey was absolutely wonderful. I even came to enjoy the romantic bits of it. That's it, y'all. Those are my 7 favorite science fiction fantasy trilogies as of 2024. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I am working my way through a lot of trilogies right now. I expect to finish a bunch by the end of the year. So I'm excited to update this list next year, see who stands, see who falls, and see who gets moved aside. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that there are some of these trilogies you haven't read before that you are now interested in trying out for yourselves. Some of these have been known to be on Kindle Unlimited, so if you are a subscriber to that service, you can check there and see if you can get them for free. Of course, there's always your library if you'd like to check them out with no monetary investment. I do highly recommend every single one of the audiobook narrators for these trilogies. I've tried every single one of them out, one of them being the whole reason why I got into audiobooks, period. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.